What's up, you guys? So today I'm here to talk about channeling. So what is channeling, right? It's a big topic. But first, I guess I'll start with, well, to me, channeling is interpreting a vibration. It is processing a communication of some sort, information of some sort, interpreting it and pulling from it some information or guidance or communication. That's what channeling is to me. Now, we all have intuition, right? And to me, intuition is it's like a guidance system. It's like an opportunity to connect with information that can help you navigate your journey, right? And people call it different things, right? Some people call it it could be the Holy Spirit. It could be, certain entities like in Hinduism, Ganesh or Kali or whomever, or angels or guardian angels or however you refer to it, right? But there are energies and entities that can communicate that are outside of our 3D dimension. I guess that's a good place to start. And so we live in a 3D experience here on this human experience, right? There are multiple dimensions, they say between 7 and 14, that exist on Earth, and potentially many, 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 many more throughout the multiverse, right? And so depending on what you believe in and what your experiences have been, you may believe that there are in fact energies and entities and souls that exist after death, right? And for me, what I've come to appreciate is that in terms of channeling, we tend to interpret the vibration of communication and guidance in several different ways. Now, you may have heard of the clairs, right? So most of us have heard of clairvoyance, right? Where someone sees something before it happens, or they have a vision of something, or it comes to them in a dream, and later on it happens, right? So that's clear seeing. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. Then there's something known as claircognizance, right? That's clear knowing. That generally is related to your crown chakra, where you just don't know how you know things, but you know things, right? You don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't necessarily even feel it in the body, but you just know, right? You have clairaudience, which is clear hearing. So that means you generally hear voices or you hear communication. You don't necessarily see a vision. You don't necessarily know it. You hear it. You hear a lot of mediums are dominant in their clairaudience because they hear spirit and they communicate what they're hearing to the people they're working with or communicating with, interpreting that communication for that family member or that friend, whomever, to the person who's still in this 3D experience. Then there's what's called clairsentience. That's clear feeling. So you feel things in your body, right? So you may feel tension in your stomach. You may feel, some of the medical mediums are very clairsentient, right? So they can feel what's ailing somebody that they're working with and help describe it back to them and how they might heal it, right? You may have heard of Edgar Cayce, one of the most well-known sort of channelers, right? He was someone who became popular not only for his visions and channeling sort of prophecies of what was to come, but he was an incredible medical medium in that he could have someone present it to him and he was in a trance state, laying on the couch. He never even set eyes on them, but he would tell them what's going on and he would explain how doctors could treat them, right? And so the list is long. Hundreds of people who came to see him who may have been struggling with ailments that doctors couldn't figure out. He would tell them exactly what would need to be done, what was wrong with them, and what the treatment was that they needed, right? Purely just channeling from somewhere outside of himself to have this communication. Tremendous. You should look him up. Edgar Cayce, Cayce. There's Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia, I believe it is. Tons of information on YouTube, etc. Books, blah, blah, blah. So these are the four main clairs. There's also clear smelling. There's clear tasting. And a few other clairs, but the four dominant ones are, again, claircognizance, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and then clairsentience, which is that clear feeling. So these are different ways to interpret these vibrations from whatever the sources may be, right? So in my experience, that could be from God, from Jesus, from Buddha, from Allah, from angels, from intergalactic beings, from ancestors of yours who've passed away. Like the source of information is almost limitless in terms of what could be coming in and communicating, which is also why discernment is important and why you need to sort of develop your understanding of your gifts and of your way of interpreting vibration, of channeling, so that you can sort of get to know and feel the energy signature of the communication that's coming through, so you know that you can trust exactly what's coming through, right? And that brings me to sort of this whole thing of vibration itself, right? So we're all vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe, living in a frequency-based experience. And so, you know, the things that we tend to communicate with from a channeling perspective are in another dimension, generally a higher dimension, right? Because 3D dimension, physical dimension, has a density to it, right? And when you start getting 4th, 5th, 6th, 6th, 7th, 8th higher, you're not in a physical manifestation. So naturally your vibration is going to be lighter. And so for us to channel correctly and with the intention of connecting with beings from a higher dimension, then we generally need to raise our vibration up, right? We need to meet sort of, they come down in vibration to meet us, which is a little difficult because it's like coming down, like working through mud almost for them. And we need to make sure that we're as high vibe as we can, right? So that's why generally they suggest that we, make sure that before we try to channel intentionally, we do so from a high vibrational state, whether that's, making sure you dance, laugh, listen to good music, making sure you're just in a good place before you sort of enter into that sort of thing intentionally. Now, most people are channeling in some form or another, right? That's the essence of intuition. That's the essence of receiving guidance. And you may notice that you tend to receive information in different forms and patterns in your life, right? So start to make that correlation, right? Man, I tend to get the best ideas in the shower. Why is that? Well, because the shower is very meditative, right? It tends to stimulate the body in a way that you're not thinking about your problems. You're not thinking about issues. And it sort of brings you to a meditative state where you're relaxed, very much so. And so the barriers to receiving that information and recognizing that communication tend to be down, right? So it may be that when you garden, right, when your hands are in the earth, you're sort of not thinking about the world, you're sort of just focused in on something that has your attention that you enjoy doing, right? You may get ideas then. A lot of people get them while they're cleaning, right? Because it's almost like a meditative state where and this gets into like alpha, theta, brainwave states, etc. I'm not going to get that deep into it. You can look into that more if you want, but getting into a meditative state, which allows sort of the brain waves to align with that sort of communication, where you open up different parts of your brain so that you sort of open up the pathways to that type of communication. And so frequency and vibration are very important when talking about channeling, because there are entities that are still learning. They're still learning, and so they may not have the same intention as some higher energy beings, higher vibrational beings, right? And so if you that's why you tend to get dark ideas when you're in dark places, right? Because those energy beings can attach, they feed off that type of energy, that sort of low vibrational desperation type of energy. And so that's why, being mindful of your thoughts, being mindful of how you walk through your existence and what you surround yourself and who you surround yourself with is very important, because we tend to be in alignment with certain things based on what we surround ourselves with and based on what we allow ourselves to interact with, right? Like you may have, there are certain people in your life who may always be very negative and always down and putting you down. And so that's a toxic environment that when you force yourself to remain in it, it's hard to be in a high vibrational state when you're dealing with toxicity and when you're dealing with people who are, and not that they're just bad people, but that's sort of that place they're operating from. And so understanding this sort of frequency vibration thing can really help you sort of navigate your life, and you realize, man, my job or my environment or this relationship or this situation is just not healthy for me, right? Like each time I try to go here and elevate and get somewhere, I tend to get knocked down, or I get feedback that's opposite of where I'm trying to go. And so you have to say, is this something I want to remain in, right? If I'm trying to help this person try to see what I'm trying to see and move forward and be happier, and they're just hell bent on staying in a low vibrational state, then maybe it's time to give them a little space and grace, and then continue to move where you need to move, and then maybe they'll come up and meet you when they're ready. But I say all this to say that when channeling, there are different entities, right? Like I said, the angels and different spirits and ancestors and people who've passed away and what we would call extraterrestrials, right? Or beings from different dimensions or different planets or different even universes, and they communicate. They communicate with us if you're open to that, if you're and not even necessarily when you're always open to it, because again, a lot of us are receiving guidance and we don't even know it. Like I've seen people channeling and I'm like, oh, they're channeling, don't even know they're doing it, right? Like, or they have a different name for it, right? Like in the church, they may call it prophecy, right? Where you have people walk up to you like, I'm getting this vision of you doing this and you're going to have such an amazing time and da-da-da. That's channeling, right? They call it spirit stepping in, but it's the same thing. And so just opening up your mind to that, or noticing in yourself, right? Like you may, I've had people talk about, man, I gave this speech and I don't even remember what I said, right? Like I got in and people were like, oh my God, that was so amazing. And I wasn't even talking about the things I was talking about. Like I meant to talk about, like I went off on this thing and I can't tell you what I said. Channeling, right? It just starts to come through and you become a vessel, right? So you've seen people, like I remember hearing this story about when Denzel Washington was recording the movie Malcolm X, and they were saying that he would record the scene sometimes and they would turn the camera off and he would still go for 30 or 45 minutes because he's almost embodying the spirit of Malcolm X, like literally like the spirit of him was coming into him. And you have these experiences where things like that occur, and it's very odd, it's very interesting sometimes. But when you start to move into an intentional space of trying to channel and connect and sort of take your experience to another level, then it's important to sort of understand these dynamics and understand, who you are, what are your gifts, what are your strong clairs. Most people have a dominant clair and a sort of less dominant clair. So my dominant clair is claircognizance, clear knowing, but I'm also clairsentient. I feel things in my body sometimes, but I also have visions and dreams sometimes that have future ramifications. I don't hear voices, but I do channel vibration where when I'm communicating with something, I'm feeling a vibration and then the communication is happening inside my head. Like I don't hear it with my ears, but I hear it in my mind. That's how I channel predominantly. And so just sort of to roll it back and give you a little background, like I've had intuitive visions. The first one I had was, when I was like 3 or 4, and I was sitting in a car with my sister, and we were in Springfield living with my mother, and she had gone in the house to the neighbor's house to get their kids because she was going to all take us somewhere, and we were left in the car where the car was running, and we were sitting in the back seat, but my mother's notoriously, slow, and we were like getting restless. So we ended up moving up to the front seat, and we're sitting there, and, I knew about the gear shift and all that, never touched those, but we're sitting in the car. I'm sitting in the driver's seat, my sister's sitting in the passenger seat, and the car makes this like jerk and makes the noise of the engine shifted. It changed a little bit. And I was like, that was interesting. And then it did it again a few minutes later. And I got a vision of the car rolling back down the driveway into traffic. It was as clear as day what was going to happen. And I told my sister to jump out the car. And I opened the door and I jumped out and she jumped out. And a few seconds later, the car literally, transmission still in park, started rolling backwards into traffic. And before it even hit the street, I was up, running up to the neighbor's house to tell my mother. And a guy got out of his car, jumped in and hit the brake and stopped the car. And so that's the first time I had a memory of getting a vision, of channeling a vision and having it be something that had a real impact on life, right? But then I also noticed that, throughout my life, I could see and know things about people, right? generally how to help them see a situation or interpret a situation or see what they're struggling with. And so I generally would be a person people would come to for advice, throughout my life for as long as I can remember. And so over the last decade or so, I've just sought to sort of hone that and dig down and get a little bit more refined with it. And that's really what I'm trying to do now, is help people with that sort of gift. And we all have a gift in some way. Interpretation. Some people are stronger in their gift because it's what they're meant to do, and some people it's just meant to help them navigate life, right? Like everybody can paint something on a page. Some people are meant to paint, the Mona Lisa in the Sistine Chapel, and some people are meant to not paint because they don't have that ability to sort of translate that vision into their hand. Some people can sing well, some people can cook well, some people can cook, decent. And so there's levels, right? Some people I can go play basketball, but I can't dunk a ball like LeBron James, right? It's levels. And so we each come here for different reasons. And so it's not anything about comparing, it's just figuring out what it is for you and how you are, can use your ability to channel information and vibration and sort of navigate that way through life, right? A lot of us channel, like for instance, you may run into somebody first time you meet them and you get a feeling about them, right? You sort of get an understanding or knowing, like, this person's my kind of person or this person ain't. Like, I need to stay as far away from them as possible, right? That's channeling in a way. That's interpreting vibration. That's interpreting energy and using it to navigate through this experience, right? There are different levels of channeling, but that's a prime example, right? How many of you have thought about somebody and next thing you know they're calling you or texting you, right? Or you have a dream and next thing you know that dream's coming true in some facet or form, right? So we all have these gifts. It's just giving them enough time and attention to understand and acknowledge that it's happening, and then to say, what do I want to do with this? How do I want to incorporate this into my life and move forward with it? So I guess, yeah. So my first intentional channeling of an energy or an entity. So I think I mentioned this, back in 2017, I'd end up going to Satnam Yoga for this guided meditation for Archangel Metatron. And it sort of was when I was really starting to get into this a little seriously and start to look to take courses and stuff to develop my intuition and develop my gifts. Then I was introduced to this thing called New Paradigm MDT, which is an energy healing modality. And I started taking the courses, a 4-day intensive over a weekend, like 12 to 15 hours a day. And it was like 5-6 of us in this little basement room, and we're receiving these activations and we're doing these clearings and doing all these things. And then like the third day, the practitioner, his name's Kevin, he's like, now you're going to channel, because he had been channeling sort of the whole time. And he's like, now it's your turn. We're like, what? Like, that wasn't in the syllabus. Like, we didn't know we were supposed to be channeling, right? And so he's like, I promise you can do it. Like, you're going to do it. And I was like, you know what? I'll go first. And I didn't know. I was nervous, but I just felt like I can do it, right? And so I sat down, I quieted my mind, and I just said, if there's something willing to communicate with me, please step forward. And I think the first being that stepped forward was an entity called Kuan Yin. And what's interesting about channeling is that you tend to feel the vibration in your body of the essence of that entity or energy that you're channeling, right? And so with her, it was like so much love. Like, it was almost overwhelming to the point where I felt like I was going to cry. And so I had to be mindful of keeping my voice together and not choking up, because it was so powerful, the energy of love that was coming through me, right? Then I channeled Merlin, the magician, right? I thought it was just a fictional character. And instantly the energy was different. It was like joyful and playful. And I was like almost giddy laughing. And later on, I channeled Archangel Metatron. And he's been someone who's been integral in my life in terms of channeling and giving me direction and helping me to understand different things. But that was my first experience of intentionally connecting and channeling with an energy. And I've since taken a master's course in New Paradigm MDT, and I've been channeling entities ever since. I had an entity come to me when I was in a bathtub, shortly after taking that first New Paradigm MDT course. And I'm just sitting there, had no intention of channeling or doing anything. I'm just relaxed, ultimate, chilling out in my house. And I hear this voice say, "I'm Drury." And I was like, "Huh?" And I look around like there was somebody in the house with me. There was nobody there. And he's like, "I'm Drury." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "I'm, part of the Galactic Federation here to bring balance to the universe." And I'm just like dumbfounded, right? And I know this may sound a little odd, but it is what it is. Like, take it, leave it, love it, turn it off. I don't give a damn. And we communicate and sort of have a conversation about, who he is, what he's doing, and sort of why he's talking to me. And that was mind blowing, right? Because A, I didn't initiate it, and B, it came through so clearly. And I've since talked to Drury multiple times. I've channeled him in front of someone else before. And it's just interesting to sort of have these experiences and to get validation, because I've always felt certain things, but to get this validation that there's so many things that are going on that are outside the normal day-to-day that we tend to interact with. And if we just tap into it a little bit, you'll see that there's beautiful magic happening just outside our experiences if we're willing to look at it and appreciate it for what it is. So that's an introduction to channeling. I may dive in a little bit deeper down the road, but I wanted to sort of get that out there. And hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was helpful. If you got any questions, put them down in the comments, and talk to you guys again soon.